In this movie, I'll show you how to open an image file inside Photoshop just by double-clicking on it here at the Windows desktop. If you're working on a Mac, I show you how to do the very same thing from the Macintosh Finder in the next movie. Now notice that we're looking at the contents of the O1 Open subfolder inside the Exercise Files folder that's available to those of you who are premium members of lynda.com. In which case, you're going to see 4 files called Welcome. They're really called welcome.jpg, welcome.ping, welcome.psd, and welcome.tiff. The reason is that the JPEG, PNG, native PSD, and TIFF formats are the 4 main file formats that you'll use to save your work from Photoshop. And we're going to discuss that in more detail in Chapter 6. But for now, just know that these files have extensions which are hidden by default. But we're going to have a lot better time working inside Photoshop if we can see those extensions. To make them visible, go here to the View menu that's available at the top of any folder window in Windows 8 or later. If you're working with Windows 7 or earlier, what I recommend you do is Google Folder Options, because that's the command that lets you turn on file extensions. But again, here under Windows 7, you just want to click on View, and then you turn on this checkbox right there, File Name Extensions. And now we can see the real file names, welcome.jpg, welcome.ping, welcome.psd, and welcome.tiff. Now under Windows, each and every file type is linked to a specific application. What application that is anyone's guess, and that's going to vary on a system-by-system basis. So the way files are linked on your system, in other words, is different than the way they're linked on mine. But I happen to know that my TIFF files are linked to Photoshop. So just by way of demonstration, I'm going to double-click on this TIFF file, and you can see that it opens up inside Photoshop like so. And I know I'm working in Photoshop because I can see this horizontal menu bar at the top of the screen, followed by this context-sensitive options bar. We also have a vertical toolbox over here on the left, as well as a few panels on the right-hand side. And that's all a very good sign because unless we open the file in Photoshop, we obviously can't edit it inside Photoshop. But things don't always go that smoothly. I'm going to go ahead and click the Minimize button here so that I can return to my folder. And I'll go ahead and double-click on welcome.jpg, and that happens to open the image on this system in the Windows Photo Viewer. But you may open it inside the Photo app or one of several other different utilities. And this is not what I want because Windows Photo Viewer, while it does have a few editing options, it is no Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and close this application. And what you want to do to correct things is right-click on the image file, then choose Open With, and choose this final command right there. Don't just choose Photoshop because that's a one-off. You'll only open it inside the application one time. Instead, choose Default Program, so every single time you open a JPEG image, it opens in Photoshop. And then you'll see a list of programs that support JPEG files. Now, you may see some oddball options like %1, which is an artifact of QuickTime, which ironically is created by Apple. But you can safely ignore that and then drop down to the newest version of Photoshop CC, which in my case is 2015. And from that point on, your JPEG files will open in Photoshop each and every time you double-click on them at the Windows desktop. All right, I'm going to go ahead and minimize Photoshop once again. And then, rather than double-clicking on this ping file just to see how it opens, I'm going to right-click on it instead, choose Open With, and then choose Default Program once again. And I can see that the ping file is linked to Adobe Fireworks CS6. Now, I know a lot of folks who love Fireworks, but the plain fact of the matter is that it's been discontinued. Adobe still ships a product, but they're not updating it. And Photoshop is much more powerful. So what I recommend you do is switch your ping files to Photoshop CC most recent year, as I'm doing, and then from that point on, your ping files are going to open in Photoshop as well. All right, finally, I'm going to go ahead and minimize Photoshop once again and right-click on welcome.psd, choose Open With, and choose Default Program. And you can see that in my case, this native PSD file is linked to an older version of Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and link it to the newest version like so, at which point Photoshop will open up on screen. Now, it's very likely that you're going to get this missing fonts message because there's a lot of editable type in this document, and it's set in all kinds of fonts, including Helvetica Neue, Avenir, and Burka, as you can see right here. So in other words, your list of missing fonts might be longer than mine. It's not a problem, however. All you need to do is click on the Don't Resolve button, and this is a tip forevermore. If you ever open any of my files or anybody else's files that have fonts that are incompatible with your system, you can, if you like, just click the Don't Resolve button, and everything's going to work out just fine. So for example, I'm going to switch to my Zoom tool right here at the bottom of the toolbox, and I'm going to click a couple of times on the word Photoshop. Now, the plain fact of the matter is that I am missing this font. If I were to scroll up this list here inside the Layers panel, which by default is located in the lower right corner of the screen, I will come to a layer called Photoshop right there. Notice it. I'll even go ahead and click on it to make it active. And notice that we have this little warning icon, which is telling me that I am missing that font. If this were any other application, then I would not be seeing the text correctly on screen. Photoshop is unique in that it goes ahead and saves a pixel preview of that font so that you can see exactly what the image is supposed to look like. Now, you won't be able to edit the text without changing the font, but you can view it just fine. And that, my friends, is how you open a common image file inside Photoshop just by double-clicking on its icon at the Windows desktop.